All right. The MAGA base is not happy about the Jeffrey Epstein situation. We've got a major investigation against James Comey, John Brennan. The name Obama keeps coming up, and so much more. To help me go through this, I have a special guest, Lindy Li. Lindy, thank you so much for joining me again.
Stephen, it's always such a joy to be with you. You're a rock star.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just some background for my audience. Lindy Li is a former political strategist for Kamala Harris and the Democrat Party. She has since left that. She's no longer fundraising, giving them any advice. Her eyes have been opened. Her Trump derangement syndrome has been healed. She's now a critic of the Democrat Party. What do you make of this whole Jeffrey Epstein situation? President Trump seems very agitated that voters want him to focus on this versus what he wants to focus on. I don't think it's because his name is in there or he doesn't believe Jeffrey Epstein was a weirdo pervert. I think he just wants to focus on what he wants to focus on. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm actually with you on this. And frankly, I think Pam Bondi did President Trump a disservice. I think the way that she handled this left much to be desired. I think her desire to be on Fox News trumped all common sense. In February, she had said that she had the client list on her desk. Turned out not to be true. I just feel like the way that she handled the messaging could not have been worse. And then you add the MAGA influencer thing at the summit at the White House. I mean, everything was just handled extremely poorly. And just even taking President Trump out of the equation, I actually don't think he's implicated. I don't think that's it. In fact, I think if you just took Trump's name out of the situation, far more Democratic men are in this mess than Republicans. I mean, we're talking about Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, RFK Jr., who was a Democrat at the time. Like, so many Democrats are listed in these files. So I don't think this is about Trump personally. I think this is just about him wanting to focus on the things that he was elected to do, including border security, reviving the economy, taking care of our country from a foreign policy and a domestic policy standpoint. But frankly, Pam Bondi definitely dropped the ball on this. It was a self-created disaster, a PR disaster.
Okay. Alan Dershowitz, who represented Jeffrey Epstein, and David Schoen, who represented Jeffrey Epstein, have both said Donald Trump was nowhere in any of the mess that they were trying to clean up on behalf of their client, Jeffrey Epstein.
Democrats would have leaked it by now if he was,
Yeah. 100% you guys would have weaponized that against him. You're telling me?
Not you guys. I have nothing to do with
those. Sorry. Democrats would have weaponized that against him.
It's been 6 years. They would have leaked it by now. These people hated, they were, foaming at their mouths to take down this man. You think they wouldn't have leaked it? They had it within their jurisdiction for 4 years. If there was something there, they would have leaked it. I guarantee you. They hate this guy so much. Everything was about Orange Man bad. This would have been the biggest weapon against him, and they would have used it. The reason why they didn't is because it doesn't exist.
Okay. That's a great point. On the other hand, I think, Trump is saying, okay, the majority of this sicko's behavior happened under Barack Obama. And then you had the Biden administration for 4 years. They were silent on this. Why am I suddenly having to deal with this when I want to make the economy better and I want to rebuild the military and I want to end the Russia-Ukraine war? I just think he's maybe missing the mark that this is something important to his voters, even if it's not important to him. But I don't think that I think it's just him wanting to focus on what he wants to accomplish as president in the limited time that he has.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Pam Bondi blew this out of proportion. It didn't have to be this way. It really did not. It was a cell phone. This is a cell phone. This is a self-goal. And Trump is doing, honestly, such a great job. They said he couldn't get the big, beautiful bill through by July 4th. He did. They said that he wouldn't have been able to handle the Israel-Iran situation in a peaceful manner, but things have calmed down now. And now we're negotiating a deal with Israel. And Israel and Hamas, the situation that is also calming down, and Trump is now doubling down on sanctions against Russia. On every single issue, he is making progress. And then to get stymied on this self-created PR mess is just such a shame. And he didn't even do it. It was Pam Bondi. Yeah. She was just so eager to be the face of the administration. I think she got carried away. I don't think there's any malicious intent behind her. I just think that it could have been handled differently. And no one should be, this also just goes to show that no one member of the cabinet should be out there freelancing. It should be a coordinated response,
I think that's where Kash Patel and Dan Bongino's frustration came in, because this was like a standard run-of-the-mill letter that went out to Axios on a Sunday night, and they were like, whoa, wait a minute, I don't think you understand that this was a ticking time bomb, and you just put it out there like it was nothing. At the same time, I read the news for hours every day. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, they have taken down so many pedophile rings that, again, like, it's not to diminish what happened under Jeffrey Epstein, but that did happen in the past, and I hope that those people get healing. But there's children affected right now that Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, they're rescuing, they're saving. So it would be such a tragedy to push these men out while they're doing so much present good for the country.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone should be going anywhere. I do understand that I think there's a lot of unhappiness between Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino. But every member of his cabinet administration is a valued asset. So I just, I do like that Pam Bondi in recent days, in the past couple of days, has tried to calm everything down and just said, we're speaking with one voice now. But it's really just such a shame that it's come to this. It was just completely unnecessary. And you're basically giving Democrats fodder. You're giving Democrats a chance to look good, which is never a good thing, because Democrats are now trying to pass legislation in the House saying we should release all the files. Yeah. They should be careful what they wish for, because I seem to remember a certain former president listed again and again in those files. Not only that, they're one of the biggest funders of the Democratic Party, Bill Gates, his ex-wife, one of the biggest reasons why she actually divorced him is that he refused to stop hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. So honestly, I just want to reiterate that Democrats should really be careful what they wish for here, because far more prominent Democrats are implicated in this pedophile ring than Republicans.
So you were a consultant, you still are, you still have that mentality. What would you recommend to President Trump? Say, hey, listen, everyone, time out. Let's do a special prosecutor and hand this off. Let somebody actually go dig up the dirt. Meanwhile, I'm going to focus on the things I want to focus on. What would you recommend?
I actually think that's brilliant. Assigning a special prosecutor to take it so everyone knows that there's full transparency. And Charlie Kirk actually came out with a 10-point plan. I think there's something to be said about that. Looking into what exactly happened with Alex Acosta's sweetheart deal in 2008, looking into possible foreign ties. I actually think, I hate to say it, I know I'm going to get hammered for saying this, but Tucker Carlson brings up a lot of interesting points. Did you hear his speech at Turning Point?
I watched some of it. He's not the first person to say, okay, this guy, could have been linked to the Mossad, to Israel.
There's just so many questions. And it's how does someone go from being a high school teacher to being, he wasn't a billionaire, but he had hundreds of millions of dollars. How do you do that in such a short span of time? I think these are questions that need to be asked, and you can't just say, it's anti-Semitic to ask them.
Yeah.
No, I feel like if you just use that weapon for every single argument, it kind of just loses, because anti-Semitism is a real problem, but you can't use that as a cudgel for every single line of inquiry,
Yeah.
But, just having full transparency, assigning a special prosecutor, and moving on with the great things that he's doing. Let his administration speak for itself. And enough with the Pam Bondi and the, posturing on TV. It just can't happen anymore. No one person should be hogging the spotlight for their own self-interest and then undermining everyone else, which is essentially what happened here.
Yeah, if I were consulting President Trump, I would have him go on TV and say, listen, I've heard from my voters and I'm here for you. I want to do what you guys want. If this is important to you, I'm going to assign a special prosecutor that's going to dig up everything and tell us everything. And then I'm going to do the other things that you guys voted me into, because I'm not a special prosecutor. I'm not an investigator. I'm the president of the United States. I'm going to keep running the country, making America great again, but I'm going to give you guys what you want, which is to dig into that's what I would do.
I think that's perfect. Absolutely. And it keeps the base happy and shows the base that he's actually hearing them. I don't think calling them very bad people is a good idea. Just my personal, I don't mean any offense at all. I just don't think attacking your own base is probably the smartest move, especially because everyone is coming from, a good place. Like, people are genuinely concerned about pedophile rings, especially with possible ties with foreign governments. I think anyone would be rightfully concerned about that.
Yeah. From what I know of President Trump, after covering him for 2 terms and the in-between, when he says stuff like that, he's usually thinking about some people that are close to him, not the voters. Yeah. But the voters take it as if he's talking about them.
That's actually such a good point, because he's probably thinking about Tucker.
So he's probably saying, you know what, if Tucker Carlson wants to badmouth me or whatever, but he doesn't say the person's name.
Yeah.
I don't believe he's talking about MAGA voters.
Yeah, the problem is it's interpreted as an entire MAGA movement. That's actually such a good point. I wish more people would understand it that way. Thank you, Stephen, because I'm looking at the reactions across the spectrum, and everyone's like, he's talking about us. Why is he throwing us under the bus? And now that's actually a good point. He's probably talking about Tucker and a few other people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the same time, like, if your name keeps getting brought up into something and you know that you're innocent of it, like, of course you want it to go away. But again, I didn't take it personally. I don't think he's talking about me. He doesn't even know me. But just from what I've seen, when he calls somebody out and it sounds general, it's usually him calling out somebody close to him without naming a name.
Yeah, and can we not forget the fact that he's the one who kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago? Like, why are we not talking about that more? Yeah. Before Jeffrey Epstein was even outed by law enforcement, Trump had already cut ties. Yeah. And no one gives him credit for that. No one really mentions that anymore. But that happened.
Yeah, it did. Okay, let me switch gears with you. Ever since you left the Democrat Party, they are really struggling, and I'm okay with that.
Oh my goodness. But, it's like one thing after another, right?
Out today, Quinnipiac says that the approval rating of the Democrat Party sits at 19. That is like ridiculously low.
That high? Yeah, who are these? I would like to know who these people are. Do they all have like blue hair and like 4 nose rings? It's extremely unfortunate, because they are still doubling down on identity politics, on woke, on DI, on all that shit. On all that stuff. They haven't learned a single thing. And it's just extremely unfortunate that they still haven't come clean. There hasn't been anyone. Okay, let me take a step back. Anyone like Gavin Newsom who wants to run for president in 2028 should start with an apology. What should they say? They should apologize. They should say, I'm sorry for lying to the American people about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Because people like Gavin Newsom, they didn't just cover it up. He was the biggest propagandist. He was the one out there on June 27, 2024, lying to the American people after the debate that Joe Biden was fine. People like Newsom was the most vociferous voice out there defending Joe Biden, saying he's a genius behind closed doors. You just don't see it.
Yeah, and I guarantee you Newsom didn't either. He's just peddling a lie.
I know infinity%. He knows that Biden was not okay. He absolutely did not think that he was okay. And I'll be saying more about this in the coming months, but there are senators and governors that I know that I was friends with who confessed to me that Biden is in no shape to run, but yet they supported him anyway. They went on cable TV and sang his praises and waxed lyrical about how amazing Biden was. They did it anyway. There are two reasons why. Number one, they hated Trump. Again, orange man bad, anything in the service to defeating him. That's number one. Number two, their personal ambitions. They didn't want to buck the party because the risk of, because they saw what happened with Dean Phillips, who ran for president. Do you remember that? He was the only guy to primary President Biden.
Yeah, I tried to interview him.
Oh, you interviewed him?
No, I tried to. He wouldn't come on.
Oh, he's probably too scared. But they saw what happened to him. He was completely ostracized from the party apparatus. He had to resign from. He was basically run out of Congress because he dared to point out that the emperor has no clothes. So no one had the guts. No one had the courage to actually tell the truth.
What about? Hey, I want to be brief. If you give your body what it needs, the immune system can take care of you. That's how God and nature designed our bodies. And I want to tell you about a way to raise your happiness levels, your immunity, your bloating, your waistline. All of these things improve when you take kimchi. This is Kimchi One by Brightcore. They've been a sponsor of the channel for many, many months. I take this. My family takes this. My 11-year-old who had bowel issues, were able to clear these up with kimchi. Now, there's good bacteria and bad bacteria in your gut. You have to flourish, nurture, give life to the good bacteria. In each capsule of kimchi is 900 strains of the good bacteria. You got to check them out. They're absolutely amazing. Now, if you go to mybrightcore.com/kimchi or snap the QR code, you're going to get 25% off. But you guys are smarter than that. Call them right now, 888-908-4425. Get up to 50% off plus free shipping. Do your gut a favor. Do your health and your happiness a favor. And do your wallet a favor. Call them at 888-908-4425 for up to 50% off plus free shipping. Do you think that the Democrats are even trying to regroup around new policy, new ideas, or are they literally just doubling down on Trump is the worst thing that ever happened to the country? Trump, like they literally have nothing other than Trump. And guess what? In 3.5 years, he's gone. So like, why aren't they rebuilding? Why wouldn't they go, oh my gosh, 1 in 5 Democrats thinks that we're good, and the 4 out of 5 Democrats thinks we're terrible. We have to pivot.
That's such a good question. I wish I had a better answer, but these people are absolutely obsessed with Trump. And one thing that may not be obvious to everyone is they're making so much money off of this. Because when they send out an email and say, come on, resistance, we got to defeat this man in the White House, so much money pours in. It's a galvanizing force. And having been on the inside of the fundraising machine, I can tell you that's happening, but most people may not be aware, which is why I love our conversations, because you are not going to hear this in mainstream media. And the most amount of money is triggered by anti-Trump clashes. Gavin Newsom, I don't know if you remember, but a few months ago, he tried to do the moderate thing. Do you remember that with his podcast? He interviewed Charlie Kirk, but then he realized that wasn't working for him. And then he had the LA riots, and he realized, wow, me standing up to the National Guard, me standing up to Trump is actually really profitable for me. And that explains the recent turn, because he went from being moderate for a month. It's like wearing an outfit for him. He doesn't even care. He just like whatever works for him, whatever gets in the most donations. But he realizes now that being an anti-Trump warrior is helping him. Number one, make a lot of money, get a lot of donations, and number two, raise his profile for his 2028 presidential run. And he and Kamala Harris, man, they hate each other so much. So there's going to be a lot of fireworks in 2028.
Okay, I never considered the fact that they don't actually care about defeating Trump, but just talking about him gets their voters to open their wallet. They're literally taking advantage of people. that's disgusting.
Yes, and so Trump is not an existential threat, but them saying that is such a huge moneymaker. And I know because I believed it and I got snookered into it for years. And it took me an entire year to come out of it. It's not an easy thing to come out of because you basically have to disabuse yourself of your entire worldview, which is why it was such a slow shift for me. Like about a year and a half ago, I was like, wait a minute, I'm actually a diehard conservative. And I've been like inching that way. It took me a really long time because when you grow up believing in NBC News, ABC News, like these like flagship media organizations, it's really hard to come out of it. And also when you have the entire media apparatus telling you that Trump is an existential threat, and then you raise money off of it, and then you see Obama yucking it up with Trump at Jimmy Carter's funeral, and then you see Biden hanging out with Trump in the Oval Office and just laughing it up, and then the Democratic base is like, what's going on? They feel completely abandoned. Maybe because Trump isn't the threat that they said he was, and they just said it because it was a way to make money and bring in the donations. There was no way that Kamala Harris would have raised $2 billion without the specter of Trump. It wasn't because she's so great or the second coming of Jesus. I can guarantee you that. They were running against Trump. That was Trump money right there.
Okay, this is why I like having you on, because I don't know how to think on the other side. You're learning to think on both sides, but it never crossed my mind. See, at the funeral and other interactions as a Republican, I see, George W. Bush didn't want to talk to Donald Trump. But you're going, oh my gosh, like, why is Obama laughing at Trump's jokes? Why is Jill Biden flirting with Donald Trump?
Not only Jill, Ashley was in on it too.
Yeah, why is Joe Biden laughing with Donald Trump? Why is he calling him saying, oh my gosh, you were almost assassinated, I'm glad you're alive? Like that would have been really confusing for the base.
You want to hear something else?
Yes.
I'm really good friends with someone who's really close with Trump, someone who texts with him on a weekly basis. This is someone that he's known for decades. He went to Russia with him. Someone who worked with him at NBC. I want to protect his privacy. According to this guy that I know really well, Trump and Biden actually call each other on a regular basis just to like chat.
Really?
Like right now I'm talking about like this summer, this spring. So all that talk about Trump being the last gasp of American democracy, I mean, come on. It was just for show.
Yeah. Well, I think.
And I continue to believe that, first of all, I can't remember if I said this on a previous show, but it definitely bears repeating. Jill Biden hates Kamala Harris so much. They hate each other with a vengeance.
Yeah.
And Jill wearing red, and on election day, when she voted, and when Biden put on the MAGA hat, that was not a mistake. That wasn't just like a offhanded thing. That was very intentional. Because by that time, they already hated Kamala Harris. And after she lost, all bets were off. There's no need to pretend anymore, you know?
Yeah, when she wore red, I was like, that has got to be on purpose.
I was wearing red a lot to the lead up to election day. I was like trying to tell the American people, without losing everything. Yeah, that's what women do. We tend to speak through our outfits. Nothing is just accidental.
Yeah. Well, okay. Speaking of Jill Biden, it looks like her work husband, Anthony Bernal, he was called in to testify before Congress. He gave them nothing. He said nothing. He pled the fifth on like the simplest questions that you can imagine. Let me pull this up. This is Congressman James Comer talking about the situation with Anthony Bernal refusing to give any information to Congress.
Well, unfortunately, that was quick. This is the second witness that we've brought in via subpoena for a deposition that has pled the fifth, and they've stated they're not going to answer questions. I want to read the first two questions, just so everyone knows. These are the types of questions we asked. Was Joe Biden fit to exercise the duties of the president? He pled the fifth. Second question, did any unelected official or family member execute the duties of the presidency? And this is Joe Biden's chief of staff. Did any unelected officials or family members ever execute the duties of the presidency? Simple question. He knew he was going to be asked that. Everybody in America wants to know that. He pled the fifth. So we're going to continue our investigation. I think that the American people are concerned. They're concerned that there were people making decisions in the White House that were not only unelected, but no one to this day knows who they were. We believe there was illegal use of the auto pen. We're going to continue to bring these people in, give them an opportunity to answer questions.
Was Anthony Bernal protecting Jill and Joe Biden by pleading the fifth, or himself?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, he was protecting everyone, but I also just want to say the intensity of the loyalty and the love between them should not be underestimated. Anthony loves Jill and vice versa. I don't mean romantically. They are just family.
Okay.
So they are intensely loyal to each other. It's the same dynamic with Kevin O'Connor, Biden's doctor, who also pled the fifth. This is a doctor who came out and wrote a letter to the American people saying that Biden was fit for a second term. Yeah, I don't think so. He lied to the American people. And something that people may not be aware of, I want to draw attention to, Kevin O'Connor was in a defunct hospital scheme with James Biden, Joe Biden's brother.
What?
In Florida. I kid you not. The thing fell apart. But I'm mentioning this because Kevin O'Connor had deep financial ties with the Biden family. They were in cahoots. Okay. It was like the Irish. I have a lot of Irish friends, but like they stick up for each other. You know, it's a very like family oriented environment. He was part of the Biden family. I'm trying to stop myself from saying Biden crime family, but so he was part of the mafia, so to speak. So Kevin and Anthony, they're never going to flip. They're just not going to. But I was looking at my old photos with Jill, and it's actually interesting because in every one of them, Anthony is lurking in the background, which is hilarious because it just goes to show that he followed her everywhere. And I have to say that he was always nice to me, but I do want people to be aware that during his tenure in the White House, there were a number of sexual harassment allegations against him. I kid you not. Anthony's gay, by the way. And a number of people accused him of wrongdoing. But then Jeff Zients, the chief of staff at the time, came out and said all of these allegations are false. I mean, I'll leave you to decide.
Yeah. Speaking of that guy, Zients, is that how you pronounce it?
Super wealthy, worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
Wasn't he the one controlling the auto pen? Because now
it was more than one person.
Yeah, as they
was Neera Tanden, Steve Ricchetti, Anita Dunn, Mike Donnellan, basically everyone but Biden.
And Biden goes on a podcast and says, "Yeah, I didn't look these over. I didn't approve them one by one." And then like within 24 hours, they put out this statement. Of course he did. He was just very, very busy. Now you've got a lot of Democrats that are telling him, "Shut up. Just keep your mouth shut. You are ruining the narrative that we're trying to build to protect you with."
Yeah, Biden, if he knows what's good for himself, he should just not talk ever again. He should just stop going on The View. So I don't know if you remember, but when Jake Tabor's book came out, he was freaking out. He wanted to combat the narrative that he was in cognitive decline. And so he went out there and basically reaffirmed the narrative that he was in cognitive decline. The best thing for him to do to refurbish his legacy and his image is to step away and just to be himself and just leave the American people be and stop trying to convince everyone that he's not actually falling apart. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just saying you cannot convince people that your mind is intact when your mind is not intact. It's not something that you can engineer. You just can't. And no one can beat Father Time. It's not going to get any better. It's not as though this is something he can improve. It's not a skill that he can acquire. This is something that's disintegrating over time. And I've noticed, I've been with him at many, many events, the prefrontal cortex is a part of the brain that controls decision making. It's also the part of the brain that starts to atrophy with time. And what does that mean? It means that you lose your inhibitions as you age. If you notice, some of our grandparents, our great-grandparents, they start to say these really nasty things sometimes. It's because they lose that shield and that filter. And that's what's happening with Biden sometimes. So he just really should just go away, keep going to the beach, just enjoy his retirement instead of trying to convince the American people that he's actually a genius behind closed doors. Because every one of his appearances has backfired.
Yeah, that dude needs some stem cells in the brain and 20 grams of creatine every day for 30 days, then do a podcast.
I think his disintegration is so thorough at this point. I don't think any amount of, I just don't think it's going to help. I think he should just retire. Just let it go.
But I think he's convinced that he's the only one that can save the party, just like Barack Obama's convinced that he's still the head of the party, even more than Joe Biden.
Did you hear what Obama said behind closed doors just a few days ago so I obviously got kicked out of the party, but it would have been an event that I would have been at.
What he said.
What'd you say? Stephen, what'd you say? I talked over you.
Oh, you're back.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry. I was just going to say that Obama behind closed doors told a gathering of very wealthy donors that they must have courage in the face of Trump. He said this within a gated community on one of the wealthiest estates in the state. He could not be more tone deaf. And I want to point out that one of the biggest losers of the 2024 election wasn't just Kamala Harris and Biden. It was Barack Obama. Because now the veil has been removed from everyone's eyes. The scales have fallen off. Obama is no longer the great, untouchable Obama. We've seen him with all of his flaws.
So when he tells wealthy people that they must have courage in the face of Trump, does that really mean that they should just open their wallets?
Yes, you are fun. You're learning how to, that's Democratic speak. Exactly. That's exactly what he means.
Okay.
Fork over your millions.
Yeah. Only your money can save us now.
That's precisely what they told us. I've been looking through all my emails from the DNC leadership in recent days. And it's basically like, hey, millionaires, if you don't step up, everything's going to go to shit. And like, call all your friends. And they made it was just like, and something else I want your amazing viewers. By the way, your viewers are amazing. I love reading your comments. You guys are fantastic. Something that I want everyone to be aware of is this. Any candidate commission poll is complete BS. The only polls you should consider and take seriously are those by like Rasmussen, for instance, or like any pollster that's a standing independent organization, not one hired by the candidate himself. Because every candidate commission poll is a propaganda tool. Not an exaggeration. Why would a candidate potentially pay $70,000 for a poll other than to support their campaign? A poll serves two purposes. Number one, to get donors to keep giving, because they wouldn't give to someone who's like fifth place, right? They would only give to a candidate with a chance of winning. That's number one. Number two, to leak it to the mainstream media or whatever and have them write up a piece of positive coverage. There's no way that a candidate would put out a poll that actually has them losing. There just wouldn't. So every single one is a propaganda weapon.
Didn't it come out that Kamala Harris's campaign knew that she was losing, but continued to say she wasn't because otherwise the fundraising would have stopped immediately?
Yeah, I was actually the first. Yeah, I was the first person to break that in November, and I caught hell for that. But it was true because 2 weeks before the campaign, they were actually right down the street at the Ritz-Carlton in Philadelphia. They were telling us that Kamala was winning and that she was going to win 3 of the battleground states. There's 7 battleground states. Guess how many we won? They won.
0.
But they told us 2 weeks before, on October 13th, 2.5 weeks. They essentially lied to us it was what I call fraud adjacent or legalized fraud. It's just extremely unfortunate that they did this. And this is why I'm glad, they exiled me, and I'm glad they did, because I don't want to be part of that clown show. But it was very, very painful at the time. But I'm glad, I guess in a way, I'm glad that I was kind of the 6th sacrificial lamb, because right now they're having such a hard time fundraising. And had I not come forward with the behind the scenes stuff, people wouldn't have found out. Like, if I hadn't said anything about the Beyonce stuff, like, people would not be talking about it. I made a huge thing about how they wasted millions on celebrities. That was a narrative that the American people deserve to know. And right now we've seen a lot of coverage about how the DNC has had tremendous difficulty raising money. And I'm glad that I was a part of that, because now the American people know, and they were operating under the delusion that the DNC actually has their best interests at the heart, because they don't. All these staffers, all these consultants, and by the way, I wasn't a consultant. I wasn't paid. I want people to know I wasn't paid. I volunteered to be a bundler. Okay, so people are like, oh, she's just a disgruntled employee. No, I'm not hireable. Thank you very much. I did it because I wanted to. I actually, for a time, I told you, I believed it. I believed it. And so I'm glad that now donors are looking askance. Like, donors are just refusing to fork over their wallets now, which is why, as you said, they're at 19%.
Yeah, 19% approval rating. Nobody throws money behind a loser, right? Like, okay, we've got this horse with a broken leg running in the Kentucky Derby. I'm going to put my money on that one. Like, people are smarter than the Democrat Party wants to.
Here's another thing that you're not going to hear anywhere else. The DNC kind of operated like a pyramid scheme, and this is how. So one donor can raise as much money as they want to, but a donor can also recruit other donors and take credit up to $250,000 of what the recruited donor raises. Does that confuse you? I can explain it.
Yeah, go a little deeper on that.
So you can recruit a donor, and the recruiter, the person recruiting the donor, can claim up to $250,000 of the money raised by the person they recruit. And the reason why this is significant is that there are people within the DNC just spending all their time recruiting donors or turning already existing donors or recruiting already existing donors, basically moving money around. So the incentive was to recruit as many donors as possible rather than raising new money. So it's kind of like Herbalife, but politics.
Wow.
And this is something that really struck me, because I ended up raising money for Trump's inauguration. I was so pissed at the Democrats. I was like, I'm going to help President Trump. So I ended up raising like $250,000 for him, which is actually not that much in my world. I only had 3 days. Long story. But anyway, so I was asking the RNC, I was like, well, do I get credit for the money that I bring in? Do I get credit for the donors that I bring in? They're like, no. So I'm actually, although, I would have liked to get credit. I was like, this is actually the better model, because it's more about integrity and it's more about like actually doing something for the RNC rather than trying to game the system. And the DNC was all about gaming the system. I don't know if I made it clear to you, but it's like the system was ripe to be manipulated. And obviously the entire house of cards came crashing down. Then RNC has a more, they just have a better and more solid foundation that isn't as vulnerable to machinations like that.
Interesting. Let me get your take on this. Democrats are furious that the Trump White House passed a bill to remove 1.4 million illegal immigrants from Medicaid and require 20 hours of work for the 5 million young Americans that were staying home. Why are Democrats? Why do Democrats want people sitting at home, and why do they want to disadvantage Americans to advantage illegal immigrants. It doesn't make any sense to me.
It makes me sick to my stomach. I've always been hard right on immigration. And when I was in the Democratic Party, people used to call me bigoted. But I'm a naturalized immigrant, and we never took a handout. In fact, my family created hundreds of jobs. I think that's the American way. You shouldn't be on anyone's dole. You shouldn't be on anyone's payroll. You should pave your own way and work hard. It's a gift to be an American. It's not, it's not a right. It's a privilege to be here. But something that I want people to be aware of, and I wish more people knew, is that the census encompasses illegal aliens. Okay, so under the Constitution, anyone living in the United States is counted. So again, this leads to perverse incentives. States like California would lose 2 to 3 congressional seats if it weren't for illegal immigrants. So obviously they want as many as they can. I don't know why it's so taboo to point out this reality, but it's happening. Even some Democratic people, some Democratic leaders admit to this, to wanting illegal aliens to come to this country in order to boost the electoral power. Because the greater the population under the census, the more state funding and congressional seats a state gets. There's a direct correlation between the population of illegal aliens and the amount of power that a state has. And I just don't think it's right that we are paying for illegal aliens when there are millions of Americans suffering, who are living paycheck to paycheck, who don't even have a $400 emergency fund. We should be taking care of our own people, focusing on people like in Appalachia, people who are suffering from, opioid addiction. We should be taking care of Americans first. And I don't know why it's so bigoted to care about our people first.
Okay, going back to this, and I agree with that. Going back to this, so the Democrats swore up and down that there weren't 1.4 million illegals taking Medicaid money away from Americans. Then the bill passes, and they float the idea, well, why don't we go to those 1.4 million records, and then ICE will know where to find them. Now they admit they're there, and they try to block ICE from getting access to their data. So they went from they don't exist to now we have to protect them so they're not deported.
Yeah, exactly. They don't even care that there's no consistency between their narratives. It changes from day to day. But I just don't, again, they fight so hard for people like Abrego Garcia, the gang member, and they just don't really care about actual Americans. It makes me sick to my stomach. And then they wonder why they keep losing. And so I do like that California has now woken up. They're in a budgetary crisis, so they realize that paying for illegal aliens is not a good idea. But I can't get over the fact that these people, they come to our country and then they burn our flags and they set cars on fire and they destroy our cities and they want to be treated like Americans. Like, who are you? I love how Arnold Schwarzenegger said on The View, and all the ladies on The View were shocked. He's like, being an immigrant is a guest. You don't come into someone else's house and trash their house. You conduct yourself with dignity. That's an attitude. Maybe it's an East Asian thing. That's why I'm deeply conflicted about my heritage, but I love how, with East Asians, we come to America, we work hard, we don't make a fuss, we don't set cars on fire. Like, it's unthinkable. We just work hard. We try to go to good schools, become doctors and lawyers, create jobs, and that's it. I actually think that's a type of high-skilled immigration that propels our economic engine. That's what we need in this country. We don't need additional people on welfare. We don't need, according to the Congressional Budget Office, 5 million able-bodied individuals refuse to work on Medicaid. That is absolutely obscene. That's 5 million people who refuse to work 80 hours a month. 80 hours a month. And it doesn't even have to be work. We give them a lot of options. They could go to school. They could do community service. And these people just refuse to work. Enough of that. When did we start to take this welfare mentality for granted?
I don't know. My eyes have been really opened as I've covered politics on both sides, but particularly on the Democrat side. It just really seems like they want to, it's just about power and money. It's not really
It's all
about,
about that.
it's not about growing good citizens. Otherwise, their reading levels would be better. Their homeless levels would be less. The people working, like, it's just very backwards thinking to me.
That's totally right. And I'm not naive to say that it doesn't happen on both sides. You know, a lot of people on the Republican sides may be into money, but it's so much worse on the Democratic side. It's not even close. And the worst thing is that they pretend to be better. They use pronouns and LGBTQI+. They use these really long acronyms. They use body positivity. They use like DEI and woke as a cudgel against conservatives, pretending that they're somehow better. When actually, the people actually fighting for America are conservatives, fighting for the American people rather than some random country overseas. Republicans and conservatives are the one cutting billions from USAID. That money should be going to our country, you know? And I'm saying it's not a perfect system, but Republicans have Americans' best interests at heart by far. It's not even close.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll be the first to admit, you know, Republicans have their own issues that they need to work through. Great policies, sometimes terrible execution. You know, Trump has really shaken things up for good and bad within the party. And, you know, they're going to have to work through all of that. But so far, like you mentioned earlier at the top of the show, Trump has accomplished so many things. He's already kept so many promises, and we're not even 200 days in yet.
Yeah. And not only that, he's completely reconfigured the presidency. We went from a president who only spoke to the press a few times a year to someone who speaks to the press on a daily basis, several times even. He's far more accessible. He's dynamic. And whether or not you agree with President Trump on the decisions he makes, you can count on that he made the decisions. It's not Melania Trump. It's not Susie Wiles or Stephen Miller. It's Donald J. Trump. He's the one, he's the force behind the West Wing. There's no doubt about it. Even his adversaries have to concede that point. And that is what I support. I want a president in charge. And as you say, like, no one is perfect, but the Republican Party is doing a far better job of actually centering the American people, putting Americans first, you know, actually caring about the American people, not illegal aliens. You know, it's just like, and I think Democrats are finally waking up to the fact that if you do not have a nation of borders, you essentially do not have a nation at all. You know, we have to have national sovereignty. We need to have some sort of law and order on the border. Otherwise, what's the point of having the United States of America? It's basically the United States of the world. You can't just come here because you feel like it. It's a privilege.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Lindy, this has been a great conversation. You've got a book coming out. You've got lots of really good stuff. You've got a show that you're doing. Tell my audience how they can follow you online.
Thank you, Stephen. Again, you're the best. You always make my day. I'm Lindy Li on X, and I read all your comments. I love reading Stephen Gardner's fans' comments. You guys are just so amazing and so incredibly supportive. And even if you disagree with me, you disagree in such a respectful manner, and it broadens my worldview too, because I'm always here to learn. And you guys are just fantastic. Thank you for being so kind.
Okay. I'm going to put that direct link so people can follow you. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Stephen.